Hello, I'm Ronnie,
I'm Abby.
and this is Dragons in the Details, where we pick apart our favorite fantasy series over the course of an undetermined number of episodes. Your guess is as good as ours as how long this goes on for. This season will be focused on the Empyrean Series by Rebecca Yarros. Quick disclaimer, these episodes will contain spoilers up through Onyx Storm. If you have not finished Onyx Storm, save this and come back later. Also, due to the contents of that series, this podcast is rated R and should only be listened by those comfortable hearing explicit content. Each week, we'll be diving into a specific topic in depth. We think we'll follow that structure, but also, again, your guess is as good as ours on how this all goes. We're just two friends talking about our books. We will come with receipts. We're going to have quotes to back up any theories so that you can follow along if you're skeptical. Or you don't have to. We don't really care either way. This episode is going to be focused on Violet, our favorite plucky heroine. So let's start with, what do you think of Violet, Abby?
Can I just say real quick, I love your podcast voice. This is my first experience with it, and I love it.
Great. I'm glad.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Violet. Okay, so can we back up for a second? Actually, I think we should each talk about our experience with this series, why we chose this series, our experience with, I'm going to put quotes on, Romantasy in general, and kind of every decision in our life that has led to this point.
Okay.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I mean, I feel like I should because I got you into this mess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess my intro to Romantasy, I mean, we're both Harry Potter kids, right?
Definitely.
So like reading, not new. Getting lost in books, not new to me. I remember when I learned about the Empyrean series in general, I basically took like a reading hiatus. I mean, I read books like on and off, but I never got sucked in like this. I was walking with our friend Jenna back from a workout class, and she was like, "Can we stop by the Strand bookstore?" And I was like, "Sure." She's like, "I need to buy the new, have you read Fourth Wing? I need to buy Iron Flame." I was like, "I've never heard of the series in my entire life." And so I walk into the bookstore with her. She buys Iron Flame. I buy Fourth Wing because I'm like, yeah, I'll start this series. Fine, why not? And then I think by the time she was on like chapter 3 or something, she's going to kill me for saying this. By the time she was on chapter 3, I was done with Fourth Wing. And I had to go back and buy Iron Flame. I think maybe she sold me her copy of Iron Flame because she got it on Kindle. Anyways, the rest is history. I immediately got sucked into Iron Flame, then ACOTAR, then all of it.
I had no idea Jenna got you into this series. That actually changes my whole perspective of all of this. That's really funny.
Yeah. She had no way of knowing what we would become.
What we would become. All right. So my experience with this is, I believe, on December 31st, 2024, we were still with Jenna, funnily enough. And I saw a copy of Fourth Wing on her like table, and I said, "Oh, is that the dragon sex book?" And you two were both there, and you said, "Abby, you have to read this book." And I was like, I don't know. It sounds kind of dumb. I'm not sure that I want to. That was December 31st. By, I don't know, January 25th, maybe? When did Onyx Storm come out? I had read all of them.
23rd.
I truly don't think a day has gone by since that day that I haven't read one of these books. Like either reading them for the first time or rereading them. So I'm completely hooked. It's all I think about. My boyfriend is very sick of me talking about it.
At some point, we should get the men on the pod to confess.
I know, we're going to have a bonus episode about what it's like to date someone who is so obsessed with these books.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely was skeptical. You know me, Ronnie. Like, I'm skeptical about everything. I was like, I had to restart this book because I read the first chapter and I was just like, this is not for me. Like, it's so poorly written. It's like from a teenager's point of view.
Which
I had to restart Fourth Wing.
Fourth Wing.
I tried to start it twice, and then thankfully, I actually think this was huge. I didn't buy it. I got it out of the library, so the like clock was ticking, and I was like, okay, I know Ronnie and Jenna love this book. I'd love to be able to chat with them more about it, because also for listeners, I guess, you and Jenna live in the same city. I don't live in that city. So it's nice when I have things to talk to you about other than just when I come to visit.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I should probably just sit down and dedicate a couple hours to this and see if I can get into it. I think I sat down on the couch on Friday night and like basically didn't move till Sunday. I was like, oh my God.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
It is. It is funny though. Like we have, I mean, for listeners, we've been friends for like, is it a decade now?
Yeah, maybe more.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And we like went on different planets for the last like year. And then since we both were reading this series, I feel like I've talked to you actually every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's great. And I love that. And I love that it's just like, okay, I love that she released the Onyx Storm the day after the inauguration. Like she knew what she was fucking doing.
She knew we would need it. Yeah. We would.
I love everything about this. I mean, so I went on a big, and this is kind of a separate rant that I want to save for a later episode, but maybe we'll go on it now. I got very back into kind of Lord of the Rings last year because of Rings of Power. And there's a podcast that I listen to that covers Rings of Power. It's called House of R. They're so good. Like, I don't like the show that much, but I love, and I can't really read the books. To be honest, I've tried to read the Lord of the Rings books like so many times, but I just find them like,
they're dense.
A little dull. They're a little dull.
Yeah.
But I think the lore and the world that he's created, obviously so good, so layered. And I'm not saying that Rebecca's on that level, but like it makes me feel that way. Like every time I like reread a page, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that. Like obviously Tolkien spent like 40 years of his life making Middle Earth, and she's done this for like, I don't know, 3 years. So it's not like, I get that. Like from what I've heard,
it was her first fantasy. She's a romance writer.
Writer. Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. She just fucking knocked it out of the park. It's so good. It's so
the world building is really good.
The world building is so good. I also feel like I have to go on record and say I'm not a Swiftie. I feel like that's relevant because I know she's constantly referencing Taylor Swift, but I still love it. Like, it's a good thing. Like, I see you rolling your eyes at me, but like, I'm just saying it's for everyone. It's not just for like girls who love Taylor Swift.
The fact that we are best friends with you not loving Taylor Swift, it's something we look past.
I know, but we still love this. That's what I'm saying. This
I know.
This book creates bridges. This book is diplomacy.
Fair.
All right. I think Violet. I mean, okay. I have not read other Romantasy. I also think that needs to be said right there. This is my first quote unquote Romantasy. And I hate that word. I think it's a stupid word. But this is my first quote unquote Romantasy heroine.
Yeah.
I think Violet is on par with Hermione in terms of quality of heroines. Like I really do. And if you think that Hermione is in fact the heroine of Harry Potter, which I do.
She is. Like that is the correct answer. Yeah. To be clear.
I think she's great. I think she grows, which is awesome. She's not out of the gate just like, oh, I'm fucking awesome. Like anyone can come at me. Yeah. Which I did feel like Katniss kind of was with the Hunger Games, if we're making like other Romantasy series parallels. Like I like the simple stuff. Like she has to go to the gym every day to stay strong. And I'm like, oh, I relate to that. I too have to go to the gym. Like otherwise I'm weak as fuck. And like I like that she works on herself and grows. I think she's made some bad decisions, but I still I really like her. And at first, honestly, I was like with the whole first person thing, I was like, oh, I don't know about this either. Like, I feel like this is such a like teenage way to write. And then when you realize that it's because Rebecca wants to keep secrets, basically, like Rebecca does not want you knowing everything, it becomes so much better. And especially when everything's being filtered through like what Violet knows or what Violet doesn't know. Yeah. I think, I really like her. I think she's a great heroine. What about you?
I agree. I think she's good. I think I've had my ups and downs with Violet. So this is not my first Romantasy book. And so I do have others, I guess, to compare her to. And I think in some ways she is stereotypical in that she's like a small, weak kind of protagonist when we meet her. She's like, my bones and my ligaments are are subpar, and like Xaden is this like giant man who could absolutely destroy me kind of thing. And so when I first met her, I think I was like a little bit underwhelmed. So I was like, okay, this is another. For the listeners, Abby has not read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and so we need to cyberbully her into doing that. But she was a little Feyre-esque when I met her. But I do think that she's had immense character development. I like that she started as this kind of like weakling in the series that was constantly underestimated, acquired this power that was way bigger than her. And over the course of Iron Flame, I was about ready to be done with her because of how much she wasn't trusting of her friends. But by Onyx Storm, she really grew into and realized, like, Taryn bonded me, and Taryn is a general within the Empyrean. And so I need to grow within my own ranks and be a leader, be a tactician. And I feel like throughout Onyx Storm in its entirety, she does a really good job of that. And she actually uses her brain and trusts her own mind to make really big decisions. And yes, she's like guilt-ridden over a lot of it, but we're reading it from her point of view. And so that in a way just makes her more human. So I'm a fan of Violet. I think I'm going to continue to become more of a fan of her because that's how this has progressed for me. So when I first met her, I was like, you kind of need to get over it. And more recently, I've been really proud of her. Yeah.
And yeah, I think towards the end, not to go back to Harry Potter, right? But towards the end of Harry Potter,
yeah,
Harry is such a dick. Honest to God, Harry like sucks. Like he's just being a dick
Yeah.
to all his friends.
hate
He's
him.
being so he won't listen to anyone. He's always running into trouble, and like that's book 2, Violet. Like Rebecca was
Yeah.
smart, right? She put that Violet in book 2, but then she kept
Yeah.
writing. And
Yeah.
even the end of book 2 is like, I texted you, I'm like, oh, she's so smart. She did the Battle of Hogwarts in book 2, right?
Yeah. She didn't. Yeah.
Right.
Book 2 was easily my least favorite Violet, and it was because she wouldn't get her own head out of her head out of her own ass. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But
like, come on, get
book
it
2
together.
is my most favorite Xaden. We don't have to talk.
We
We're not
agree
talking
to
about Xaden
disagree.
this set, but oh my God. Fucking love
I
Xaden
know.
and Iron Flame.
I kind of wish we were, because we have lots of good agree to disagree content on Xaden for sure.
Next week.
I
Next
agree.
week.
Okay.
Do we want to give a little background on how we did this?
Okay, so yes, the way that we set up at least this pod episode, and if this works well, we'll continue it, is we put together a list of questions that we want to answer on a given topic, and we'll alternate kind of like who starts with their perspective, but we both independently prepared our own perspectives so that we can, in some cases, we'll probably reach the same conclusion, and others we might go totally different directions. And so we'll run through each of those questions and kind of share our own perspectives, and knowing us, the dialogue will just take off from there.
And I feel the need to add, and maybe we should, I know we said this at the top of the pod, but we are not only focusing on Onyx Storm in these episodes. This is a full deep dive of the whole series. We have stuff from Fourth Wing, we have stuff from Iron Flame, especially with Violet. I feel like there's a lot of stuff. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and then there's basically Unreal. And like that's pretty much it from Onyx Storm, but not really. But yeah, that's the plan. All right, we're gonna dive in. All right. So our first question that we had for each other was, how does she wield lightning? What does it mean that she can wield pure power? And what we mean by that, I know you guys have all read it, but just as a refresher, is when she goes to Orisha and she's being taught by Felix instead of Carr, he says, you wield pure power that takes the form of lightning because that's what you're most comfortable shaping it as. So like, yes, it's her signet, but she's literally wielding pure power. She's not like other people like, yeah, go ahead. You look like you have more to say here.
Well, I took a note on it. So Xaden, it's noted, Felix also says that Xaden manipulates what already exists and grows what already exists. And we see most of that in other signets as well, like ice wielders, water wielders, fire wielders. Well, I guess fire wielders actually do create. But Violet has a signet of a flavor in which she actually creates things. And so she is wielding pure power. Yeah.
Okay. I also had a note on that. So let's just start there. Because I was thinking about this. I was like, is there anyone else that we know that has a signet that can create things out of nothing? There is one other person that's mentioned. Do you know who it is?
I had assumed it was the fire wielder that killed Grady. I'm blanking on her name. Aura?
It's
Who is
Mira.
it?
Mira
Oh,
can
yeah.
create wards out of nothing.
And that was a recent development, like an Onyx Storm level development, I think, or Iron Flame.
I don't remember the exact quote.
Yeah.
I know we said we come with quotes, but there is a quote, I think in Onyx Storm, I think you're right, where it says Mira can create wards out of nothing. So
yeah.
We have two of our Sorrengails here, which I think is really interesting. One that creates a weapon and one that creates a defense. And I don't think that that is a coincidence. So anyway,
agree.
Yes. Also, every time the Venons see her, so I'm gonna get deep here. I'm gonna get into the origin story, which I know we're doing a different deep dive episode on the origin story, so I won't talk on it too much. But every time, pretty much, she comes into contact with a Venon, they say something along the lines of, "You command the power of the sky. You command the sky. You pull power directly from the sky." So, the origin story quotes, which we get in epigraphs and which we get in actual passages in the books, right? I'm just going to read them verbatim here. One brother bonded to griffin, one to dragon, and when the third grew jealous, he drew directly from the source, losing his soul and waging war on the other two. They say drew directly from the source. Rebecca does not tell us what the source is. It is implied that it is the ground, right? That is what we are led to believe. Venom draw directly from the ground, not through dragons. And because they are not channeling from dragons, they lose their soul. That's the first origin story quote. The second origin story quote. It was the third brother who commanded the sky to surrender its greatest power, who finally vanquished his jealous sibling at a great and terrible price. So we know the third brother drew directly from the source, and we know the third brother commanded the sky to surrender its greatest power. What do the Venons say when they meet Violet? Such untapped power, no wonder we were called here. You could command the sky to surrender all its power, and I bet you don't know what to do with it, do you? Okay? So, here's my theory on her signet. I'm now putting signet in quotes because I'm not really that convinced that it is a signet. I think it is a signet. I don't think she only draws from Tarn, though. I think she draws her power from the sky. Or will learn how to draw her power from the sky. And the reason I think that is because when they go to Unbriel, or when they go to the Isles in general, right? We know Tarn and Andarna are cut off from magic because there's a moment in the book where they're like, oh crap, we don't have magic anymore. And they both find it really hard to fly. And people have said but Andarna still has power in the Isles, like, because she draws from the sky. But Andarna, like, isn't feeling magic. And we know that Tarn and Andarna and Violet can still speak. So it's not just Andarna and Violet that are speaking, which is what I would think it was if it was that Andarna was still the source of power, but it's the three of them. So that leads me to believe that Violet has a source of power other than her dragons. And I think, based on the language Rebecca has used here, that she can draw directly from the sky. I have more to say on that, but if I want to hear your
No, I agree. I think it's not honed or done effectively outside when she is battling the queen in Umbriel, because I think it's Iron Flame, when she's cut off from Tarn, like when Tarn is unconscious, she can't wield anything.
It's Onyx
She can't
Storm.
wield lightning.
Yeah, it's Onyx Storm.
Is it Onyx Storm? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think that she's harnessed it necessarily, but I agree with you, and I want to talk more about the origin story, but I will refrain here. I think she wields pure power that currently takes the form of lightning, and I think she has access to the power of the sky, and I think it's not clear whether the source is the ground or the sky, but I'm also with you. I think it's probably the sky.
Right.
So agree with everything to date. I just don't think that we've really seen it outside of that Umbriel battle.
So here's another quote. This is from Onyx Storm. This is when they go outside of the wards. So they're still on the continent, but they're outside the wards and they're about to go to Unbriel. So they get through the wards and she says, I'm struck with the oddest urge to try and pluck strands from the very sky and wield runes, which is exactly how she grabs Tarn and Andarna's power, right? Like literally plucking strands and weaving runes. We know that she does that. Tarn says, You grow more powerful every day, more capable of recognizing what was once completely invisible to you. And Andarna chimes in, I could recognize it if you ever let me come with you. Right? So she's growing more powerful. She's recognizing that she can actually channel from the sky. And Andarna recognizes it. Again, I don't think it's channeling through Andarna. I think she's the third sibling here. I think she's channeling from the sky. I think the sky is the source. I don't know. And she can dreamwalk when Andarna's gone, right? So it's not Andarna that's giving her this power. And she can wield lightning when Tairn doesn't have his access to magic, right? So, like, there's something else. I think it's the sky. I'm certainly open to hearing options that it's done or that it's a different source of power, but I feel like Rebecca's leading us to she can draw directly from the sky, especially because she put that in those chapter epigraphs at the top. Epigraph?
Yeah.
Epithet? I don't remember.
I've heard people call them both. I don't know.
One of them is
I honestly haven't considered whether, like, Violet is the reason that they could all talk in the Isles, but I don't have a reason to rule it out. I had just kind of assumed that Andarna's like a piece, because we know that she's like a second bond, right? She's a bond that shouldn't have existed. So I thought she would just be like a piece of the puzzle that connects them all to a form of magic that they don't require being on the continent for. But maybe it's implicit to Violet. That would certainly be interesting.
Well,
and I mean, they do say that she wields something that hasn't been seen in centuries. And I think she's the first lightning wielder in over a century. So she has something more than just lightning wielding, for sure, based on what the Venin have called her and have said to her.
Yeah. Okay, so this brings me to another point. What's her name? Theophany, when she meets her, says Violet is the exception to the balance, right? Because they go through this whole thing where Violet thinks that Theophany is a lightning
She's
wielder.
An imbalance. Yeah.
Right. Which, again, leads me to believe it's not a signet, right? Because the signets are always in balance. But she has something else. She has something more that lets her draw power, create power, whatever it is. She is power. Now, why that would be her, I don't know. Like, I don't know if the Sorrengails are direct descendants of these three brothers. I don't think we know enough to answer that question.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. So I think the exact quote from Theophany was on 486 of Onyx Storm, and she says, "There's only one exception to the rule, Violet. Imagine my surprise when it turned out to be you." And when I read it, assumed that it meant that Violet was somehow an imbalance, right? Because the balance to Theophany was Lilith. Like, we don't actually have any imbalances signet-wise, I think, and we can talk more about this when we talk about signets, that we're aware of other than Xaden and potentially Violet. Well, now actually Xaden is balanced because of length. Yeah. So Violet could be an imbalance just based on what we know about signets, but also could be an imbalance because she can channel power directly.
Yeah. And that could mean she is the weapon that everyone is looking for too. Like, these might all be the same things.
Yeah. And also probably links up to the whole god situation that we have to talk through as well.
Yeah. So there's also an interesting piece here where she definitely draws power from the sky. I think there's a lot of evidence for that.
Mm-hmm.
She also seems to draw power from the ground, specifically in the Battle of Basgiath. She says, I can't strike here. I chance hitting someone above if I draw from the sky. They're too far to pull from myself, and if I miss from the ground up. Which means to me she can pull from the sky, she can pull from the ground, and she can pull from herself. I don't think there's as much here that she's like she can actually directly draw from three different sources, but I think it's interesting in terms of the origin story where they talk about like the dragon, the griffin, and drawing from the sky, that like, and dragons, I mean, actually, I know people always say dragons draw from the ground, but has she actually said they draw from the ground or that they draw from the source? Like, I don't think she spelled that out for us.
I don't think it's ever been specified. We just know that they have hatching grounds, so they're eggs, obviously. But it kind of seems like, based on the fact that they can move their grounds, like they can move the eggs to new places. I don't know that it's confirmed that dragons channel from any source or whether they're just inherently magic.
Well, we know irids are magic.
We know irids are. Yeah.
What Taryn says when they lose their magic is we draw on magic for strength, which implies to me they're not magic. Like,
yeah, I don't think any of the 6 breeds are inherently magic. Yeah,
I agree.
But we don't have confirmation on where their source would be.
No, we don't really know. Yeah. Right. We know when a dragon hatches, when a new dragon hatching ground is established, it changes the magic. But we don't know. We don't know how dragons channel. And we definitely don't know how griffins channel. So.
No.
Yeah. Oh, and then I have one more. Well, let's have you answer the question. Then I have a fun little side about an Andarna theory on the side.
Okay. I mean, other than what's already been said, like, I don't think that lightning wielding is the limit of her signet. Takaris, like, wants to see her because she's the first lightning wielder in over a century. So we know that there have been lightning wielders within the last, I don't know, couple centuries, call it. But then when the Venin find her, they say that they've been waiting centuries for her kind of power, and they call her the one who commands the sky, which obviously lends itself to the origin story. So I had assumed that Violet was a sky wielder of sorts and wields power directly from the sky, which, not coincidentally, is also the power alluded to in the origin story. So it's possible that no one of Violet's power, whether it's signet or not, has existed since the origin story. And I don't think I have nothing to add other than what has already been discussed, except for that I don't think the limit is going to be drawn at lightning. And on the ground versus the sky piece, I had actually just thought that was a product of what lightning is. Like, can't lightning originate from either place?
Well, doesn't it originate from both? Like,
yeah,
it's
charge.
Attraction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not saying...
Which also could get interesting, actually, because then is she the marriage of sky magic and ground magic?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, she's kind of both.
Yeah.
I have, like, 3 follow-up thoughts on what you just said. I'll try to remember them all. Okay, first, when she's in Deverelli, where there's no magic.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is, the king or the prince of Deverelli, makes her a deal to stay and be his bodyguard. And yes, yeah. She says to Cat, or Cat's like, why would he want you without magic? You're not special, basically. So there's like a couple things that could mean. Either Deverelli anticipates getting magic back, or they know Violet doesn't need the magic from the continent to be able to wield.
Honestly, I thought that was just them being tricked by Violet, because Violet made it seem like they just could wield because they didn't grab the conduit and wielded and killed everyone there.
Could be.
But maybe I'm under into it.
I think they're smarter than that, because they didn't see Violet wield. I don't know.
I do think that in general, we should never set too little store by something that's said in the Isles, because there's this whole world of oracles and temples that we've not even touched, and like everyone's making them out to be like drug-induced hallucinations, but like we know better than to just write those off as drug-induced hallucinations.
We definitely know better.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting follow-up thought. What's this one?
Do I fucking remember? There seems to be moments. There's a lot of talk about the weather in these books, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of like, oh, Lilith isn't controlling the weather. Lilith is like imbuing Violet during the Battle of Basgaia to make it easier for her to wield. And then we know Theophany is a weather wielder. Mm-hmm. There also seems to be a moment. There's 2 moments when they're on the Isle of Dune. When they're in Unbriel, a storm, I forget the exact quote, but basically the passage goes, Andarna is really mad because they've cheated and they've put 3 people in the fight instead of just Xaden, which was the plan. So Andarna is like enraged, and it starts to rain. Mm-hmm. And it starts to get like really thunderstormy. And that's when Violet wields, maybe or maybe doesn't. But I thought it was interesting the juxtaposition between Andarna is getting angry and then it starts raining. Like, can Andarna also control the weather the way that Lilith could and Theophany could? The second one is Parapet, all the way back in Fourth Wing. So, right, this huge storm
I want to bring this up
in
in the Lilith and Asher episode, but
this huge storm rolls in. I don't think Lilith, I know there's theories out there that like Lilith, I don't know, like Lilith did this, but I don't think Lilith would make it harder on her daughter to...
I don't think she did it, but she certainly could have done something about it, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I don't know. I am wondering if Andarna made the storm.
Yeah.
It's like a vicious storm that Violet is crossing during Parapet, and it as soon as she crosses, it stops. Right? Is this Andarna kind of testing Violet? Being like, okay, I hatched for you. Are you who I think you are? It could also be Theophany from a distance trying to kill Violet. Like,
that's what I think.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it's a natural storm. I think there's enough storm wielders at this point that we know all weather should be paid attention to.
Yeah.
But
I do think that we're about to see, and I know this is not directly related to Violet, but we're probably about to see some serious boundaries broken by Andarna in general, because I think we're learning that she can do kind of whatever she wants.
Right. I agree.
In terms of her magic.
Right.
She's 2 years old.
And she just got instructions from Leothan.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Andarna might be controlling the weather. I think maybe we get to a point where Violet can control the weather as well as lightning. I don't know what else. I mean, it's kind of all the power I can think of from the sky is like weather, but weather's very effective. Weather is a powerful tool.
Yeah, it would be interesting if she did end up growing into a storm wielder. I think it just is interesting in general to think about how signets change over time and whether violets will, which could bring us to our next question if we're ready to go there.
I think so. I know I had a third point. I can't remember it at all. So
if you want to take a minute to remember the third point.
What did you say? Because whatever you said triggered the third point. I didn't have a note for it.
It was just that no one of her, the Venin have said that no one with her power has existed for centuries, and I hypothesize that a Sky Wielder has not existed since the origin story.
Oh.
That she's the first since the origin story. And I think she's a Sky Wielder. If that wasn't clear, that is my hypothesis on Violet's lightning.
I think, right.
Signet.
She's a Sky Wielder, and Tiernan and Darna are simply vessels of power that she can kind of wield from.
Yeah. We know that they gifted her these signets. Like, Leothan would not, like, he doesn't seem like a liar. He doesn't seem capable of it. And so he pretty much confirmed that Tiernan gifted her lightning, and Andarna gifts her something much more dangerous than that.
I think Leothan is a liar. I actually think he's very much a liar.
You think Leothan's a liar?
Yes, because he says, I literally just read this quote. I still don't have the page number because I'm terrible, but
we'll put quotes in the show notes.
Says, it's just Violet and Riddick and Darna on the beach, and Leothan shows up with the other one. So all the other Irids are still there. He says, I think it's Leothan. It might be a different one, but I think it's him. He says, I have no interest in the humans. I only am interested in Andarna, which isn't true. Because the whole time they were actually testing Violet, not Andarna, right? So, like, I think that might have been a flag from Rebecca that we can't trust the Irids entirely. But I don't know that that's relevant to this conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you there, but we can talk about that more later. I think Leothan is of her den, and so I think he came back out of, like, guilt and need to take in Andarna. I agree that we might not be able to trust them. I just don't think, like, given that they saw Xaden and clocked him like that, like, I don't know that they would bother trying to trick humans.
Oh, I remember what my third point is. And this is, I think, to be another conversation. And I texted you this when we were reading this book. There are so many times in this book when Violet talks about losing her soul and losing her humanity. Like when Traeger gets shot by the arrow and she has to say thank you. If she is wielding directly from the source, is she sacrificing her soul too? Like, is that what Rebecca's setting us up for?
You're getting dangerously close to my crackpot theory, and I don't want you to.
Shush. All right,
No,
we'll be quiet.
Keep going. No, but I agree. I think like there are a lot of references to Violet losing her soul, to Xaden's soul being Violet's, and to Violet being the death of Xaden. There's a lot going on there.
And resurrection. There's a lot of resurrection.
Yeah. You know what I wanted to talk about first.
At least in fourth wing. All right. I feel like we've covered this one pretty well.
Okay. All right. So our next question is predictable in that we want to talk about dreamwalking. What does dreamwalking mean and what are its limits? So maybe it's worth just starting with the basics and kind of a recap. Violet has been having dreams about being held captive by the sage, and she also had one dream that she was noticeably confused by while she was sleeping with her squad in, I think, Orisha, in which she was close to Kat and in a burning building and told Kat, like, you're going to make it out, you're going to beat Queen of Tyrandor, which obviously doesn't make any sense for Violet to believe because Violet is in love with Xaden. Queen of Tyrandor, Duchess of Tyrandor, sorry. Then after speaking about it with Xaden, she realizes that she's been having all the same dreams he's been having and has been experiencing his dreams as him. And this is confirmed when she talks to Marin about her dream and realizes that she also embodied Marin in her dream as well when she was close to Kat. So on this realization, one, they decide that she's a dreamwalker and that she could be killed for it and that she's intrinsic. But upon this realization, she, in the next dream she's in, breaks apart from Xaden's point of view and speaks directly to him. And he recognizes her there. Like, he knows that she was in his dream, and she creates a dagger while within his dream to defend herself by thinking, this dream, if it were mine, I would be armed. And then the dagger appears. There's a lot there.
I completely forgot about that. That's fucking huge.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah. So we know that she can walk into other people's dreams, not just Xaden's. And I think Rebecca intentionally planted Marin in there so that we would know definitively, right, this is not a Bond thing. And we know that she can consciously exist as herself in these dreams. We don't know whether she can exist as other things, but we know she can exist as herself, and she can manipulate the reality of the dream, which is kind of crazy. Her dreamwalking appears to have coincided with Andarna's dreamless sleep and her maturing, and that's kind of what they hinge on and the way that they explain it. They're like, you needed to access Andarna, and you couldn't, so you manifested it on a human, and that human happened to be Xaden, because he's the easiest access. You have the easiest access into his mind. It also seems, and I think you agree on this, it seems like the sage that haunts Xaden's dreams is also a dreamwalker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which puts that signet kind of in balance. Because he's there actually recounting, like, real events. Like, he says, come and get her, and then Mira, in real life, is captured. So
I have thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I think this is important. There's a lot of... it is not clear if what Berwyn is doing, Berwyn is the name of the sage, which I think we all know, in Xaden's dreams is showing him the future or showing him a situation where he's going to try to manipulate him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in the dream where he has Mira, he says, if you come with her being Violet, I will let her live. He specifically says, I will let her live.
Mm-hmm.
What Theophany says to Garrick.
Wait, do we know whether her is Violet?
Yeah, the dream. I'm 99% sure the dream is set up. Berwyn is in Xaden's dream. He's setting a trap for him. He's like, we have Mira. You have to come with her. I can try to find the exact passage if we want to read it. You have to come with her. And Mira will live. Mm-hmm. What Theophany says is, if you come with Violet, if Violet comes in the next 5 hours, Draethus will stand. So they say different things, very specifically different things, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, and I think we have our answer, is what Berwyn is doing, which means what Violet can do, predicting the future or planting ideas in people's head. They're both dangerous. But I think it's the second one. I don't think it's the first one.
Yeah. Second one being planting ideas in people's heads.
I think they're planting ideas in people's heads. And I think Berwyn might have done this to Melgren at the end of Iron Flame with the Battle of Samara.
With the battle and his panic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I obviously have more to say on the Dreamwalking signet, but I agree. And I also think it's pretty clear, at least from my read, that Berwyn and Theophany are competing in some capacity. Like, they are not friends. And so the fact that they're like luring and Berwyn is saying she'll live and Theophany is like, after that, I'm going to slit her throat, actually, shows that the two they don't seem stacked in rank or like they might be working towards the same goal, but not together.
Right. Which means there's factions within the Venom, which I'm sure will come up in a later episode.
Sure will. One unexplained element of the Dreamwalking, and I'm curious whether you have thoughts on this because I have only one and it's not very exciting, is how Violet... So Violet and Xaden talk and agree that Xaden has had every dream that Violet has been in. But Violet, in certain situations, I think in Iron Flame, it's unclear, or it seems like Xaden was very, very far away. Like he was at Samara when she was having this dream. And so, given their bond doesn't even work over that distance, I don't know how she would walk in his dream over that distance. Either one, she can, or two, was she sleeping in close enough proximity, like directly under Imogen or directly near Garrick or Riddick or somebody else who is also having dreams in which they're held captive by Berwyn.
Interesting. I think so it says very clearly in Onyx Storm that Xaden has had every dream that Violet has had. Like, Violet describes all of these dreams. Xaden has had every single one. So it's definitely his dream. That doesn't mean it's only his dream, but it's definitely his dream. And it definitely seems like Berwyn is specifically targeting him. Why? I don't think we know yet. And I think that can be, again, a different episode. But
yeah.
Maybe
she just can't cover the distance. Yeah. I don't know.
And I think it might get back to that missing him. Like, she wanted to see him.
Yeah.
So she walked into his dream. But she also does it when he's right next to her.
Yeah. I can't wait for the Venom dreams. It's going to be great. Okay. Then let's depart like reality for a second, or at least what we know confirmed, because I have a theory that I know you know, but just act surprised about.
I don't remember it, so I will. Okay.
You do.
Okay.
I don't think that Violet's walking is limited to dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Signets are based off of what you need. We learn that with Xaden and secrets and Xaden and knowledge. And ever since literally Fourth Wing, the first book, she has had a need to literally be in other people's brains several times across the series. I don't think that this need originated with Andarna being in a dreamless sleep. And it's usually when she's needed to enter people's minds, it's actually to alter their thinking and show them the truth because she's like a good person. But it's really to alter their thinking. The first time was in Fourth Wing when Amber Mavis helped a bunch of unbonded attempt murder on Violet. And she asked Taryn to show her memory to all the other dragons, which was not normal and made him extremely uncomfortable. Then it happened a second time when she needed Bisgaia's cadets to know about the Venin and Resin, so she asks Taryn to share the memory. But even before that second event, she enters Xaden's mind multiple times, which we know might be the mating bond, but he would also logically be the easiest and most unfettered way for her to manifest mind walking. And I think there's a difference in when he like supplies memories versus when she literally enters his mind in the throne room. And we know that like the first time that she wielded lightning, she was kissing Xaden. And so I also think, but like I think it would be so cool if Violet's dreamwalking signet manifested and grew into mindwalking, because I think given what we've just seen in dreams, it would be incredibly powerful. She's creating things in other people's minds. She's talking to them. And in the case of war, if she could walk into other people's minds, she could make them think certain things. She could make them think that they're dying on the battlefield. Like, she would be like an ultimate weapon. Yeah. If that is where the signet went. And I think it'd be so cool. And I don't know if it will, because anytime that I think something's going to happen, like, Rebecca doesn't make it happen, but it'd be pretty cool.
And the Irids say to Andarna, they say to Taryn, you gave her the gift of lightning, and then they say to Andarna, and you gave her something much more dangerous, didn't you? And like, dreamwalking, is it that dangerous?
Andarna's like, it's harmless. So yes, so the 2 times that we have reliable sources on signets, right? So I'm just taking the Irids like information as reliable because they pegged Xaden as a Venin, and they seem to know what everybody did upon looking at them. The Irids, I have this quote somewhere, but I don't remember whether I wrote it down. The Irids looked at her, and yes, they said Andarna gifted her something far more dangerous. And when Andarna was asked about it directly by Violet, Taryn was like, I've never even heard of dreamwalking. And Andarna said, you're known to wander dreams from time to time. It's harmless. And that's all we know, is that she's known to wander dreams. And she's like, you're mostly drawn to him anyways. So I think the dreamwalking could be really cool, but I think it definitely has potential to be something more. And I'm excited for whatever we're going to find out about it. Okay, what do you think?
Do you think? I honestly only had one additional note on here, but then I have a follow-up question, which is that it is pointed out so many times that she can feel things in these dreams, like dream sex is happening.
Yeah.
Like, that's happening.
It'd be pretty great.
Thank you, Rebecca. I look forward to it. Do you think the way that death works in this series, right? We've already had Liam come back in some form. Souls are condemned to Malik. People are buried, whatever. But Malik seems to be the collector of souls, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think she can talk to the dead, basically? Like, do you think she can mind walk into dead people?
I just have no reason to believe that that's part of this segment. But I'm not ruling it out. Right? Like, I think we'll talk about like dedication and her gods and all of that at some point. But I think that is true, that she will be able to interface with, she already has interfaced with people who are dead, and she'll continue to be able to do that. But I don't know that it's connected to this signet. Because where would that mind be? I guess if the soul is just wandering.
Is she really soul walking? Like, we're calling it mind walking, but is she really soul walking? You know?
Or like if she's in someone's dream, can a soul and a deceased person be in a dream? And then like they're actually there and she could interface with them. I could see that too. Because you could argue that she was basically like in her own dream state when she was being tortured and Liam was there.
Okay, so Malik specifically does not have an island. Do you think he has
a bay, though?
I know he has a bay. We've never talked about it. I don't get why that's on the map. Do you think his realm is the dreams?
Dreams?
Yeah. This is a different episode. This is not our deep dive episode.
All right, we're cutting it off. We're cutting it off.
Yeah, I think this is a wild signet.
I think it's going to be so crazy. I'm so excited about it.
But Rebecca has also said, I know you haven't read a lot of Rebecca's stuff. I haven't either. I just listened to one interview. She hates heroines who just have all the power. Like, she doesn't think that's fun. So there will be limits.
Yeah. I know and agree that I think there should be limits. But I think that Violet and Xaden together are an answer of sorts. Like, I think she is a yin to a yang situation. I don't think she's limitless.
Yeah. Alchemy.
Two people make something new. What is I don't remember the quote. Yeah.
I literally wrote it down this morning. Yeah, two people combining to make something new.
Yeah.
She says it more than once.
Thank you, Narelle.
All right. Do we have more on Dreamwalking? Or...
I think I'm good on Dreamwalking. I think anything else that we would get into just gets into other episodes. Like Dreamwalking is going to be a sick signet, and I think it's mind walking, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I just feel like at some point she's put in Liam. We have to have a conversation with Asher or with Lilith. Dead or alive. I'm going to say dead or alive. Like, we have to talk to them at some point. Yeah, I just feel like we have to. And I feel like this might be a way to do it, or I don't know. Okay. Our next question was, why was Andarna waiting for her to hatch? So really, why does Andarna pick Violet? So what Andarna says specifically is that she waited 650 years for Violet. She heard about the weak daughter of the general, and she knew that she would be hers. Also, Andarna says mine a lot, the way that Xaden also calls Violet mine, and Taryn does too. This is an important word, mine. So she was like, I knew you would be mine. You had the mind of a scribe and the heart of a writer, and I knew. And Violet is like, I didn't even know I would be a writer at that point. And Andarna says, and yet here we are, all sassy, which I love. Okay. So my first thought about this, Andarna says she waited 650 years. Exactly. She gives us an exact number. We are in year, I believe, 632, maybe? So the Great War and the Unification have not happened yet when they leave Andarna behind. Why did they leave her behind? Why was she what the criterion? Yeah. Why did they leave her behind? I don't have an answer for that. I just think that's an important detail that Rebecca would not put in there if it weren't juicy.
Yeah, I mean, her conception had to predate the unification.
Right.
Yeah. Significant.
So yeah. And we know the Irids are there for the unification because the ward stone is fired. And then they leave. They leave almost immediately because the second ward stone in Orisha is not fired. And we get kind of conflicting information here, but Andarna says she was left behind to fire the ward stone. I am assuming it's to fire the second ward stone. But why were the Irids... how did the Irids know a second ward stone was going to be there? Or
was the word stone already created and they, for some reason, were unwilling to, they needed Andarna to be the judge that the people that owned that second word stone were worthy.
Which makes no sense, right? Because you would think if you're an Irid and what you want is peace, a ward stone is a way to peace, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thing is sketchy. This doesn't make any sense. If anyone's wondering how we know that the Irids left before the second ward stone was fired, there's an epigraph where Lyra talks about, if I'm to be court-martialed, fine, but I'm putting up another ward stone should the others ever return. The others, in this case, it's not clear, but when you read it again, it seems to be talking about the Irid. So we know the Irid leave before the Orisha ward stone can be fired, but within the lifetime of Lyra.
Yeah.
What the fuck, Irids? That's not a cool move. Okay.
They're surprisingly unhelpful for somebody who wants peace.
Claims to want peace, right.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think there's so many parallels between Irids and Venin, specifically in the way they hide in the dark. Different episode, but very interesting.
They're also a balance.
They're a balance. They are magic.
I think they are magic. This also means, right, that there have been no Irids in the Empyrean since the unification. 0.
Yeah, because she's the oldest of her den.
Yeah, she's the oldest of her den.
And a follow-up question to that. Did they leave the continent, or did they come to the continent to fire the ward stone and to leave Andarna? I don't think we have the answer to that. We definitely don't.
No, we don't. We never heard anything about their hatching grounds. We get information about, obviously, the other den's hatching grounds here and there, but I don't know where the Irids.
Again, okay, we're still a little off the rails, but this is so interesting. I want to keep talking about it. When they go to Hedotus, I don't know,
Mhm.
Hedotus and the
Mhm.
Zinal Island.
Zahilna?
Zahilna.
I think it's Zahilna. Yeah.
Rebecca makes a point to put this in. Andarna scratches the ground with a single talon. That's the first thing they do, like when they land, is she scratches the ground with a single talon. And then after that, both times she says, my family's not here. Like, they're not here. So she knows, like, just looking at the ground, she knows.
Yeah.
It's something that's under the ground, right? And we know that venom pull from the ground. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Back to
why Andarna
chose Violet.
Yeah.
So what she says when they're having this conversation, when Violet confronts her and says, "You're not a black dragon," Andarna says, "You are as unique as I am. You want the same things. You have the heart of a rider and the mind of a scribe." That's on page 539 of Iron Flame for anyone following along on the book. You have the heart of a rider and the mind of a scribe. I would argue Dane also has the heart of a rider and the mind of a scribe, right? Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, that's not really enough. Because if it were, she would have picked Dane. But then she says, "You are as unique as I am. We want the same things." Okay? So we've already talked about Violet being unique. This might be the sky thing. This might be being touched by Dune. Dune.
I say Dune in audiobooks, but it's spelled like done.
It's spelled like done. I don't know. Dune is Timothée Chalamet.
It's also one N.
I know. All right.
Anyways, continue.
So we want the same things. I think this is really important. What Andarna wants is to find out who she is. That's what she wants. She wants to know her family. She wants to understand what she is. Violet has never said anything about wanting that because Violet thinks she knows who she is. But if she doesn't, if she's something else, then I think that will be something that's explored more in book 4. Like, this to me points to what we were saying about before. Like, Violet is a rider and many other things too. And I don't know if her and Andarna are the same type of other thing, or if it's just that Andarna recognized that Violet is different from everyone else the way that Andarna is also different from everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I also think they have similar themes and personas, right? Like near the end of Onyx Storm, when Violet is basically, it's shoved in her face that she's going to be the death of all of them because she'll choose everyone. She also calls out that Andarna would choose everyone. Like, they both have like a due north moral compass to a fault, but they're also incredibly violent. And I do feel like they are basically the same persona, just in different forms. I also think it's slightly unusual that Andarna was able to tell who Violet would be just through hearing the elders talking. And she is really oddly quiet when Taryn makes it super clear that he knew nothing of her father's research. And I don't know what capabilities Andarna, or just dragons in general, have with regards to like foresight or anything like that. But like, Andarna definitely knows something that we don't. She was able to tell who Violet would be from the hatching grounds. And I don't think that that's common for dragons. Like, the other dragons show up at threshing and see what's available and who's who based on laying eyes on them. And I don't know that we've ever heard of a dragon hatching for somebody.
For a rider. Right. No.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
And I think that there's also just some, like, the Irids are obviously in the Isles. The Isles are dedicated to the gods. There's oracles. Like, something is there that brings the two of them together. That's not just, you would have the mind of a scribe and the heart of a rider. I just refuse to believe that is all there is to it.
I agree. I don't know that we know more at this point.
Yeah, I don't think we know
obviously the next book is gonna, like, I'm assuming like, maybe because we know Andarna could manipulate time when she was a hatchling, right? So maybe Andarna has actually been gone for years, even though it seems like it's only weeks. Maybe like time is different on the Irid Isle. Like, maybe they can change it. And...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she could have been gone for ever and just come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that one other thing related to Asher and like Andarna finding Violet, it can't be coincidence that Asher spent his entire adult life putting together these texts on Feathertails, and then Andarna finds Violet. And I wonder whether Andarna didn't find Violet and choose her because he left those texts to her. Because he specifically said, I wrote this study so that it could be read by others but understood by you. I don't think he could write the answer because he intended it to be publicly disseminated, but he knew that Violet would have the ability to piece everything together. And I think that Violet and Andarna together are the weapon.
But
maybe.
Yes, I agree with you. But my point about Dane stays that
he's a spare. He's a backup.
Kind of. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Except that Violet is the one who figures out that Deverelli was dealing in dragon eggs and Dane doesn't. Yeah, so Dane just wasn't smart enough. Sorry, Dane.
Dane's a backup.
Just like Bodhi said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the only other thing, this gets back to my Andarna controls the weather theory, is that Andarna says the girl who was forecasted to become the head of the scribes, which I thought was an interesting word, forecast.
Choice of words. Yeah. Forecasting.
Just thought it was a weather-related word in a place where a weather-related word was not needed.
Yeah, interesting.
Could mean nothing. Could just be Rebecca being Rebecca. I don't know.
Could mean nothing. Could be something. Yeah, I feel like we don't know a ton here, but I think it's going to end up being key to the entire story.
Yeah.
That's my only prediction is there's enough to unpack there that whatever the answers are to all the questions that we have based on that will be the answer to the winning this war, ending the war, not winning.
Yeah, I think they're the key, especially because Taryn chose Violet first, right? It didn't need to be Andarna. So
yeah, she attached herself.
Right. Yeah.
It also means that Violet can survive without Andarna.
And Taryn.
I don't know if Taryn. Maybe. But I feel like we were given something very intentional when Leothan said, "Who bonded you first?"
Yeah. But that's because he said, you've already broken the bond rule. Humans are only supposed to bond to one dragon, and you've already fucked with that.
Yeah, you've created a second one where the second one shouldn't exist. I suppose, maybe now Taryn dying would kill her, but Andarna's 2, and so maybe by the time she has more power,
maybe she's not
Taryn
2.
dying wouldn't.
Though, if she's gone to a different isle where time moves faster, maybe she's 20. Who knows?
By the end of Onyx Storm, you mean? Yeah, I don't know. True.
I don't want either of them to die.
Yeah,
but I'm saying if we lose a dragon,
yeah,
it's not going to be Andarna. Yeah,
I agree.
Too important, and she's a kid. Rebecca's not going to kill a kid.
Yeah, we get so little time with Andarna after she comes back that I don't feel like we really had time to understand anything about her or what's changed.
I don't know, but Theophany is Andarna is why Theophany dies. It's not because of Xaden. It's because Theophany bumps into Andarna and it's just spellbound. Yeah. And Violet can stab her. Because otherwise, Theophany could have just pieced. We know she can move at lightning speed. She could have just left.
Mm-hmm.
All that could have been for nothing if not for Andarna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. Anything else on Andarna waiting to hatch?
No, we covered it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the next question we asked ourselves were, what are the paths that Violet might choose? So for context, when Violet was going to be dedicated, which we learn about in Onyx Storm, to Dune, it's noted that they start dedicating her and they cannot finish the process because her path is not set. And so it's implied that Violet has multiple paths, and we see this kind of thematically throughout the book. And so I am curious your thoughts on this because I have obviously some, but not a ton to go off of. So I isolated kind of 3.5 ish paths for Violet that all have the same kind of theme, and you could argue that one side versus the other is all intertwined. There was the first and most obvious, which was become a scribe or become a rider.
I
and
totally
we know
skipped
that
one.
we know that Lilith forced the rider upon her, but she reinforced it. Like, at the end of the day, she ultimately chose and rejected Dane's many invitations to sneak her into the scribe quadrant when it was invited. So, scribe versus rider. Then we have Dane versus Xaden, which I feel like the average reader wouldn't necessarily even recognize that as a choice to be made, but she was, like, materially interested in Dane to the point of kissing him when she came into the rider's quadrant. Dane kind of embodies, like, the scribe side of that battle and Xaden the rider, but we know that Dane ultimately is a rider as well. And so I think Dane and Xaden deserve kind of their own paths. And at the end of Fourth Wing, there's a verbatim where Violet says, "I can't help but note both of the important men are walking away from me right now in opposite directions. And given the one I've chosen to follow, my life is about to change forever." So we can assume that she chose, obviously, Xaden from that path as well. And then the last one is, like, maybe a little bit of a reach from, like, the verbatim, like, we have hard evidence of this perspective, but I think there's also a path of being like her father versus being like her mother, and I don't feel like that's exactly scribe versus rider, because I think even within the rider's quadrant, there is still a divide from what we hear and learn of Asher and Lilith, on Asher kind of trying to attack, like, this broader conflict head on, versus Lilith kind of receding and protecting Navarre. And so I think that's, like, the path and a half, is being like her father versus being like her mother. And also, like, within the rider's quadrant, the kind of half decision is choosing to protect Navarre in the way that Navarre has chosen to protect itself and ignore kind of the rest of the world, versus go out and fight the Venom, which is the other one that she chose. So that's really what I have on paths. I feel like there's some stuff there, but I'm curious your thoughts, or whether you had other ones that I didn't mention.
So I had, in my mind, choosing Xaden and Dane versus rider versus scribe is the same path, right? If she chooses Dane, she chooses a scribe. If she chooses Dane, she becomes a scribe, right? That's the only way he'll kind of accept her, which is absolute fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
If she chooses Xaden, he will work with her, he will elevate her, he will make her into, well, she will become a rider. I don't like saying he will make her a rider, but I actually think there's three paths here. And the reason I think that is because of the combat scenario in Unreal. So I think the choices are Xaden, Dane, and herself. So she has to pick one of those three, because there's three combatants in Unreal, and they always were going to have three combatants. And the person who made that choice was the High Priestess of June in Unreal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember during that fight, Arik, I should get the audiobooks, because I don't know how to say any of these names. I'm going to say Arik.
I can't even remember what they said. I would assume Arik based on how Aaron is spelled.
Yeah. He really wants to fight. He tries to fight like 3 times.
Yeah.
And she won't let him. But she pushes Dane and she pushes Violet into the fight.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, that's because she's testing the three of them. She's seeing who is worthy in Dune's eyes to actually be Violet's path. And Violet wins. Like, Xaden only lives because Violet throws her dagger and wounds his combatant. I think it is Xaden versus Dane, but I think it's her too. Like, she has to choose to not, obviously, don't choose Dane. Dane's a bad choice. But, like, even more than that, it's like choosing herself over Xaden, because obviously Xaden is not going down a good path here. Like, she can't follow him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what that fight was about, is that at the end of the day, she's going to have to choose her. She will save Xaden, right? She saves Xaden in the fight. And I know you and I have different opinions about how this series ends. I fully believe she saves Xaden.
I want to believe that, to be clear. And it's whatever. We'll get to that. I agree. And I actually think that, now that I'm thinking about how it was phrased, like, even with, is it Grandma Niara? Niara, right? I don't remember how
I
to
don't
pronounce her name.
remember.
Their grandmother, Violet's grandmother. Also, there's like something told by an oracle, right, where if she chooses it's implied if she chooses Xaden's path, right, then she can still come back to Dune for mentorship, but the heart that beats for her is like turns dark, basically, for all the right reasons.
Okay, so
that's one path, I think. Xaden turning and her choosing herself is one path.
Right. So the priestess says in Unreal, I still see us among your paths. And Xaden has already turned, right?
Yeah.
So even though Xaden's turned, she can still go to Dune. She could still become dedicated. And maybe that is what happens at the end of the book. We're not touching that today. Right. But it's her choice to not follow him. And if you believe that Xaden did not kidnap her, drug her, and force her to marry him, which I do. I don't think Xaden would do that. I think she had to choose it. Then it's choosing herself, right? Yeah. And she's the only one who wins her battle kind of outright.
Yeah. That's a good point, though. Like, there is definitely a path, a decision point, like a fork in the road for her to turn versus not.
Yeah, it's at the end of Iron Flame.
Yeah.
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 She's
I feel like it comes back several times after that, though, because they're after her.
Right.
Like, the Venin, it's unclear to me, and we should get to this when we talk about Xaden and Violet and Venin in general. It's unclear to me, like, who they actually want.
Right.
Because she's called a leash. They beg him to bring her. Like, that's a whole separate
I totally agree. It's like, at first they seem to want Xaden, then they want Violet. Yeah. Then they want both of them. I don't know. We'll dissect that at a later date. Other side note, which I thought was interesting. This just has to do with the Unreal fight. There's a line in Onyx Storm where Xaden says, we are allowed to enter court at the level of the combatant that we beat according to your laws. He's talking to the guards in Unreal. Violet beats their queen. Is Violet the queen of Unreal? I don't know, but I think maybe. I think we've left that door open.
So I have thoughts on this as it relates to the second question. Or the last question.
The last question. Okay, all right. We'll come back to it. The second thing, this is a different path. I agree on your path. I think her other path, this has to do with the one who curries her favor. I think...
You know who I think that is?
I know who people think that is. I think it's Loial. I don't think it's Malik. So Loial, for everyone who forgets, because this is barely mentioned, is the goddess god. The reason I think it's Loial and not Malik, I do think Malik is important. I think she will literally meet Malik, but I think the other who curries her favor is Loial, because the priestess says to Violet, do you not yearn for temple? Usually the touch created such longing that you can't help but return. Or perhaps now you favor another god, and her eyes slide to Xaden. The way she describes temple is exactly the way Violet describes sex with Xaden. Like, one touch is all it takes. She can never have enough. It will never be enough. She always needs more, right? And then, go ahead.
So I noticed the exact same thing when she says, like, do you not yearn for temple? Like, usually somebody who's touched literally can't stay away. And obviously also thought, like, Xaden is her temple. But Xaden is also, throughout every single, like, most of the sex scenes, is compared to Dune. Like, the Wrath of Dune, Avenging Angel. He's compared to a lot of deities, and I don't know whether, like, it makes sense that it definitely could be Loial. Like, totally. But I don't think it's, like, I had actually in my head thought, okay, if she's been touched by Dune and she hasn't yearned for temple, then Xaden represents some embodiment of Dune.
It could be that. But in that case, well, and there's that scene, the first scene, the second time they have sex in Fourth Wing. He's like, she cries out to the gods, and he says, which one? I'm the only one here.
You, yeah.
Right. And she says you. Right. Just like, holy shit. He also he's constantly talking about worshiping her. Right. And like, he's like, you are the temple where I worship. She's like, what are you doing? He goes, worshiping. Like, their sex is like a religious act. Yeah. Right. And you pointed this out to me. He goes from calling her violence to love.
To calling her love. Yeah.
Right. Which is not, it can't be a coincidence. Right. So like, if he's violence, then she's love. But if she's violence, then he's love. I don't know. I think you're right that maybe Xaden is Dune. Like, that kind of does make more sense. But that's also because we're getting it from her point of view. Like, we don't know what she looks like during battle, you know? And Dune is a goddess, not a god. I don't know. And Xaden turns for love.
Yeah.
Like, everything he does is for love, even if it's violent.
Yeah. I agree. Like, this is the part I'm really stuck on, because I think I could make a case for both of them being touched by Dune, Loyal, and Malik.
Yeah.
All of them. And so I'm like, I don't know what.
So maybe Dane is Malik.
Love and war is mentioned many times.
Right. Your soul is irrevocably changed, which is gonna be important by love and war. Like, that fucking matters.
They're the only two gods that require a lifetime commitment, lifetime dedication. And they also just never stop talking about Malik. And so I'm just... There's something there. There's something in what the priestess says. Maybe you've begun to worship another god. And looking at Taryn and looking at Xaden.
Yeah. Right. She does look at Taryn first.
She looks at Taryn first.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The only god that Xaden is continuously compared to is Dune, with the exception of the avenging angel / messenger of the gods comment, which seems more Malik rooted. But he does everything for love. And so you could argue that he worships love and that Violet is love, which he says.
Right.
And that he is war.
I don't know. We all know they didn't make it to the Love Island. Haha, Love Island. Yeah. But
yeah, Loisum or whatever it's called.
Yeah. I am shocked if we don't get there in book 4. Like, it feels so important. Like,
yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And I think this also mirrors Asher and Lilith, right? Like, Lilith is war, Asher is love. Like, it has to be. It's not just Dune. It's not. Like, I know there's some theories that she's touched by all 6 gods. I think she's definitely not interested in Zanal or Hedotus is the island, but the god of wisdom, she's fucking over him. Like, not interested.
Yeah.
And then Amari, we don't really know that much about yet.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do know that Violet spent most of her time in Amari's temple.
Yeah. Just as like a catch-all. I don't know.
Yeah. And then, like, after her dad died, she said she spent some time in Malik's, but Xaden definitely is the temple that she's drawn to based on her dedication or partial dedication. It makes sense that he would be an embodiment of Dune, but I don't know.
We don't know anything about Loyal. However you say it.
Yeah.
Like, we have nothing. Could be a man. Could be a tawny-skinned, dark-haired man. Like, we don't know. And, okay, I was trying to remember this because I couldn't find the quote. But wasn't there... Obviously, when they get married, it's at Dune's temple, right?
Uh-huh.
Do most people get married at Loyal's temple? I thought I remembered a quote that, like, and I couldn't find it, so I might have hallucinated this, but I thought I remembered a quote somewhere that was like, even if we got married, Loyal probably wouldn't take me because I haven't been to temple in so long. Like, Violet said that, but I couldn't find it, so I might have made that up.
I don't know. I mean, I know that the continent has temples for all, with Love and War being the second biggest to Amari's temple.
Right.
I don't remember that specific quote.
Okay,
but
maybe I made it up.
Or I could just not remember it.
Yeah.
Entirely possible. I didn't do as detailed of a reread.
Yeah.
And
then the last path that she talks about is Theophany. She has a quote that's like, was one of the paths that the priestess saw for me working with Theophany, going to Theophany. But I mean, obviously that doesn't really play out. Like, Theophany definitely dies. But I think turning Venin or turning Sky Venin, if that's a thing, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it lies in the same path as turning.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like, and I'm curious about this, we should talk about it in either the Xaden or the Venom episode. Seems like Berwyn is like not who you want to turn in the presence of. Seems a little protective and manipulative.
There's a couple very interesting Berwyn quotes in that last page of Onyx Storm that I think we should dissect, but I don't think this is the episode for it.
Yeah, not the episode for it. Okay, I agree with those paths. I mean, I think it's paths galore for Violet, honestly. And no one really talks about paths for any other characters, but it does feel like she has the highest number of forks in the road.
Well, the other place where they talk about paths is finding a cure and finding Andarna's family. Like, they link those two together. But Violet says constantly, and Andarna, every possible path.
Yeah.
Which feels intentional. Like her paths obviously lead to finding a cure or something. Yeah.
It almost seems like there is a specific path she needs to go down to either find or be the cure. And
maybe
she's like still trying to figure out what that is.
Eric knows what it is.
No, I can't believe we haven't actually talked to Eric since we basically find out that he's a precog and then never see him again.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even see him when we find out he's a precog.
And he's probably with Xaden, right? Yeah. That's what people think.
He is unaccounted for.
He's unaccounted for. Okay. All right. Oh, right. Sorry. I'm doing the last question. I feel like we've already covered it, but that's fine. All right. So our last question
that we've not covered. So please.
Okay, great. Our final question for the day of 2 hours of podcasting later is, why is Violet's hair partially silver? So we all know Violet has partially silver hair no matter how short she cuts it. Mira thinks it grew in that way. There's a couple theories. Lilith told her that her hair was silver because Lilith was ill while she was pregnant with Violet, and that illness sapped her strength. Obviously, people who are dedicated to Dune have fully silver hair. One of the things that we know is that the priestesses, and I guess maybe priests as well in Devar, who are dedicated to Dune, who work at the temple, have to dye their hair. So their hair does not come in naturally silver. But when Violet shows up to defend the temple when the Venom are attacking in Orisha, the priestess says to her, "Oh, do you have to dye your hair?" And Violet says, "No, it grows in that way." And then the priestess says, "Oh, you have come from very far to protect us." We assume that means that the priestesses in Umbriel don't dye their hair. Doesn't necessarily mean that, because this is Rebecca. Could mean anything. But that is the assumption of what that means. And then Violet says, "Aren't you going to protect yourself?" And the priestess says, "Dune will protect us." And Violet says, "Dune isn't going to appear and take up arms." And the priestess says, "Of course not. She sent you." Right? And there is also speculation at the end of the book that the reason why Brennan's, I don't know, lieutenant or something does a double take when he sees Violet is because her hair is now fully silver and she is now fully dedicated to Dune. Could be. I'm not 100% convinced because I still think she has multiple paths to go down.
Yeah.
But so her hair is silver basically because she was touched but not fully dedicated, which ties into our past question. I didn't end up having a lot for this. I think I was the one who wanted this question, but I, in the end, didn't have a lot of notes. So I'm very happy to hear what you say.
Yeah, I mean, I some of the same things that you noted, right? We know from Mira's visit to Grandma and from Violet's time in Umbriel that Asher definitely attempted to dedicate Violet to Dune. They wouldn't complete the dedication because her path wasn't set. We also reached the same conclusion. I took it a little bit further and said that perhaps dedication can only take place in Umbriel, given the temple attendants in Tyrandor dye their hair, and those in Umbriel mentioned no such thing. And so you can assume, we already assumed, but now we can pretty solidly say that Violet was likely dedicated in Umbriel.
Do you think Garrick took them to Umbriel to get married?
I don't. I thought about that. I don't. Garrick couldn't have. There's no magic.
He's exhausted.
Well, there's no magic.
Yeah.
Even if he turned, he couldn't have.
Right.
I don't know if you can walk across oceans.
I don't either.
But I know that you can't channel in a place where there's no magic.
So they couldn't have gotten back. Unless
And
they
I think,
brought...
I mean, there's too much, like,
Wait,
Eric said to protect the temple in Orisha, and that's how you saved Tyrandor.
but if they brought Alloy to the islands, then they could have. This is an argument for Garrick being the brother, which I don't really think he is. But if they brought the Alloy to the islands to dedicate Violet, and then he drew from the Alloy, which means he has to turn to get back in time.
Yeah, maybe.
Again, I don't think Garrick is the brother, which is a
12
different
hours,
conversation.
Yeah, this is a different conversation. The question was, why is her hair partially silver? I think part of the answer to that is that she was touched / not completely dedicated, but partially dedicated to Dune in Umbriel. We also already talked about how she doesn't feel a pull to the temple, but she certainly feels an impossible to sate pull to Xaden. And so is Xaden also touched, also dedicated, embodies Dune? I don't know. Does he embody a different god? More on that in the Xaden episode. But I also think it like kind of brings up a question of why. Okay, yes, Violet's hair is partially silver because she's dedicated to Dune in part. Why was she dedicated to Dune? That is a much bigger question and a harder one to answer, and obviously has a lot to do with Asher and Lilith. But we know that Asher went in secret. He did not tell Lilith it was happening. We know that Grandma Niara doesn't speak to them anymore as a result of it. And Lilith says she might never forgive Asher. But I think the actual ask of this question, and maybe we just don't answer it today, is why'd he do that? Why'd he bring her there?
Right. And well, okay, so what Brennan says is that children are dedicated when they're, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's basically to fix
benefit to the child.
Right.
Benefit to the child. Yeah. So was something wrong with Violet?
Or was that a lie?
Or was that a lie?
I mean,
or did he think that it would solve the fact that Violet's like tendons don't really work right?
Well, right. That's what Violet thought. But then either Brennan or Mira says, no, Dad thought you were perfect. He would never try to fix you. I think Mira says it right. So I think my original theory was that, I mean, this is a common theory, that Lilith turned Venom and that dedicating Violet was the way to cure her.
Yeah.
I don't think that anymore. Because, and this, again, we'll talk about this more in the Venom episodes, Lilith is the one who's trying to find a cure for Jack. Lilith is the one who's ordering Nolan. We know that because Nolan writes a letter to Lilith. It's one of the epigraphs at the beginning of the chapters.
Yeah.
If Lilith knew of a cure, she would not be looking for it. And I'm also not convinced that Lilith is cured, to be honest. I think she might still be a Venom at the end of Iron Flame. I think she might have delayed it. I think she might have found a way to put it off, but I don't necessarily think she found a cure. And maybe this was the way to delay it, was by dedicating Violet.
But what if Lilith was Venom, even if she was Venom at the end, what if Asher did all of this behind her back? He didn't tell her anything.
That we know of.
And he also didn't, that we know of. We do know that 2 months are missing of her journals, right?
Right.
When she and Asher are in the Isles. And Asher specifically says in the text that he left for Violet that he wrote them so that all could read, but only she would understand. I still think it's possible that he figured it out, but could not tell her or put it into text because he knew that leadership was corrupted.
Right. I don't disagree.
I think that's totally a possibility.
Right. And that also means he no longer trusted Lilith.
Yeah. Trust only Mira. He didn't know that Lilith was dead when she was going to be reading that.
Right. Unless he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust only Mira. Right. Yeah. Which, again, they're the only ones that we know of that can create things with their signet. I hear what you're saying about the fire, but fire at the end of the day is really just hot air.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, actually, if I remember, is it Aura that wields fire? Aura does,
Aura
right?
wields fire, yeah.
Okay, yeah, she has a...
Yeah, she has a flame. She has a lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. So
you're right.
No.
You're right.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I know it's one of the oldest theories in the book, but it still kind of feels like it might have been working towards a resolution of some type. I don't know if it's a cure for Venom. I don't know
agree.
what it is.
But I also think it would be classic Rebecca to make us think it's a cure for Venom.
100%.
I just don't think, at the end of the day, something with war is going to be the way to cure Venom. It's like leaning towards, as corny as it sounds, like love is going to be the answer, because we have that epigraph about the Venom woman who destroyed a town except for her family. Like, she let her family live.
Yeah.
And like, that means, and so Theophany says two important things, many important things, but two very important things. She says, we don't feel love and we lie, which in my mind means she's lying about Venom not feeling love. I think Venom do feel love, especially if they turn for love, right? Yeah. I don't know if anyone's turned for love before. Like Berwyn says, people usually turn because they're jealous or they crave power. I think those were the two things. But then he says to Xaden, but you will turn for love. So I don't know if anyone's done this before, which might mean love is the answer, right? Like the fact that Xaden turns for love means he can't be fully corrupted.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I definitely think it's important that, obviously it's important that she was touched by Dune, but I don't. This is so interesting. This is a whole can of worms. Like, what if it's not that he was trying to save Lilith? What if he was trying to save the continent and he knew that he knew what Violet was going to become because of the oracles on the island. So he knew he needed to dedicate her, but it's not to save Lilith. It's to make her more powerful so that she can ultimately defeat the Venom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that's honestly more likely. Like, I think even if, I mean, who knows, right? But even if Lilith were Venom, like, who's to say? Because we know that Asher spent a bunch of time in the Isles, including time before he was married to Lilith, based on his epigraphs.
Right, and we should explain why we know that. Okay, we know that because the epigraphs are... It says the rank that Asher is at when he's writing each epigraph, and his maiden name, quote unquote, is Daxton, right? So we know at which point, I think he's General Asher Sorrengail or something. We know the point at which he actually marries Lilith. So we know, I think it's the first 3 books, and again, we'll do this more when we do the Asher deep dive. He's not married to Lilith because they're written by Asher Daxton. And we also know at one point there is a General Daxton who's a scribe. That's not Asher. That's going to be a family member. I'm betting it's grandma, but we don't know.
Yeah. Yep. So it would be equally interesting, even if everything wasn't to save Lilith, if Asher had been raised or spent a lot of time around the temples in the Isles, had talked to oracles, and even if Lilith, like, was Venom at some point, or was Venom her entire life, and that played into him lining everything up such that Violet could be an answer or could find the answer.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly cryptic, but I can't complete the thought without sounding insane. So
that's why at some point... Yeah.
Precog Corner.
At some point, we need... She either figures... There's 2 options. She either talks to Asher, dead or alive, again, dead or alive, or she figures it out from the books, right? Because we've only seen... Asher wrote 7 books. We've only seen 3 or 4 of them. I can't remember the exact number. Again, we'll get more on this in the Asher Lilith deep dive, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. Inconclusive, I think, is where we landed on this one.
Yeah. The why, the tactical why is somewhat clear. The greater why, is her hair silver, is up for debate.
Yeah.
Okay. We wanted to conclude the episode, and potentially every episode, depending on how it goes, with a segment called Precog Corner, which is where we discuss our absolute wildest crackpot theory for whatever topic we're discussing at that time. So, welcome to Precog Corner. Do you want to start with your three? I'm nervous we're going to have the same one, but go for it.
I don't think we had the same one because mine just occurred to me.
Okay.
And again,
I'm more worried that we have the same one now, but okay.
Well, it occurred to me before this episode, and
Okay.
it has nothing to do with Venom, kind of. I think when we do our Xaden episode, the why of this will become clearer. I think Violet becomes queen of all of Navarre and the general of the army. There are a couple reasons why I think this. One, and again, we'll get into this in the Xaden episode. The way that Eric and Xaden are scheming, it seems incredibly important that Violet becomes Duchess of Tyrrendor and is in charge of their army. Like, you can read that book and realize that everything that they are doing, Bodhi is the spare. I will give you that. Like, Bodhi is plan B, but everything they are doing is to get Violet to the point where she will be the Duchess of Tyrrendor. Like, that is all that matters, right? So, like, that is very important that Violet is the Duchess of Tyrrendor and in control of their army. Mm-hmm. After Violet gives her speech in Onyx Flame, and the speech is when there's three factions back at Bezgaia. So there's the Aretian riders who left with Violet and Xaden to go to Tyrrendor because they believe that the Venom are there. There's the original riders who didn't leave, who always stayed at Bezgaia, and then there's the Griffin Flyers. And they're all about to fight each other, like tensions are boiling over. They all hate each other. Violet gives a speech, a very good speech, about how, like, we can't be this way. The Venom are coming. We need to solve this right now. And it works. And Eric and Xaden, who are clearly already scheming at this point, right? Eric says, wow, that was quite a speech. Violet should be a politician, at the very least, a general. And Xaden says, I was thinking a duchess, right? So at that point, I'm pretty convinced they're already scheming on this. Mm-hmm. So Eric says she should be a general, which leads me to believe she will be the general of the armies. Mm-hmm. Whether that's just the Aretian army, which I think she is. I think by being the Duchess of Tyrrendor, she is the general. She's like the commanding general of the army.
I think she is.
Rebecca is very specific about dropping in these little nuggets that Violet has lived in every province on the country. Like,
which makes sense.
She has been everywhere.
Military. Yeah.
Right. Which leads me to believe that she would be accepted if she were to be queen. Like, everyone would say, okay, she's been here, she's been here, she's been here. She knows all of us.
Yeah.
She should be queen. So I'm like, the first 75% of my logic, I think, is like unflappable. The last 25 is where this kind of goes off the rails. But basically, I think we know she's the Duchess already. We know Eric says she should be a general, combined with the fact that she's literally lived everywhere. And the way she drops in these nuggets is very, very specific. But, like, it's literally in each book, it's like a different province is mentioned where they grew up. I think she becomes queen. I think she gets all of it.
I like it. I can definitely see it. I think the other, like, interesting added tidbit, other than the fact that she just, like, really grew into leadership capabilities in Onyx Storm that we had not seen to date, is the fact that through the epigraphs, we also know that within their lifetime, there is a new world and a new language.
Yeah.
So we know that more than likely the world unites in some capacity because there is, like, a new modern tongue that even replaces Navarre. So at least maybe the continent unites or something to that effect. I don't know. And the only person so far that has ties to both the Isles and the continent other than Xaden is Violet.
Okay, so we look at who could be king, right? It's Halden and Eric.
Yeah.
Eric says he's going to die.
Eric says he's going to die. Sob.
I'm going to be devastated if she doesn't, but, like, Eric says, I'm going to die in this war.
He said more than likely die or something like that.
Yeah. I don't think Halden, if there is a unification, a second great unification that includes Paromial.
Yeah.
I don't think Halden will be accepted as the leader. Right. I think there will be a coup or something.
There's no way Halden rules.
There's no way Halden rules. He's not.
Yeah, no one likes him.
Right.
He gets shot down in the scenarium by Violet,
right,
which is another piece of symbolism that lends to Violet being a better leader than he is, or at least he acknowledges that she is.
Yeah. So I think this ends with her being queen.
Okay. Mine is way more far-fetched, in my opinion, and has significantly less evidence. It's really just a hunch. So two main things led me to this, and a bunch of other small things. The first is that when they finally find the Irids on the island that they were lucky enough to land on, which we'll get at another time, the Irids say there's no cure for venom. Like, there's nothing you can do. Their souls die. And when prodded and asked, are you sure that there's nothing that could be done? The Irids say maybe their offspring could evolve. And it's kind of a throwaway comment and like a cop-out. We also know that when Violet is training with Felix, he teaches her that her power is attracted to venom. And that the venom will actually her power will draw itself towards the venom if she recognizes that can be true. And so I think that Violet is a combination of venom and rider, and that she is the beginning of evolved offspring.
I believe you. Because I think Lilith was a venom. I don't think Lilith was ever cured. The question is, was she a venom before she had Violet?
Well, that's what I'm saying is I think she was. Like, I think that Violet is, and that's part of why she has the issues that she has, is that Violet is biologically offspring of a maybe initiate venom and a human.
Well, and you said rider. Do you think that?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's fair. It's fair.
Venom
and a human. I don't know whether it was Asher or Lilith. But it only needs to be one of them for her to experience biological impact.
I mean, yeah, there is also a theory going around that Asher is big bad venom.
But he could still be, yeah. But I find it, I honestly have basically no proof for this, other than the fact that comment from the Irids and the, small allusion to the fact that her power is attracted to venom. There's a bunch of other little things, right? She kind of sympathizes. She alludes many times to the fact that she sort of sympathizes with venom in some capacity. I understand why they would want that power. I get it. She's softer to them. She's also softer to Xaden, obviously.
There's literally no way that's a throwaway line. You're absolutely 100% correct. She didn't just put that in there. That was an intentional line.
Yeah, I just don't know whether it already happened or whether it's gonna happen, but the dedication does not line up to the weakness. I just don't think that those two things are conflated.
So what if she was dedicated to save her? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, to save her soul.
Okay.
And that's why they're one soul.
Her and
Neither
Xaden.
of them have a full one.
Her and Xaden both don't have full souls.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love this book.
Crackpot.
So much. We've literally been talking for 2 hours about one character.
And on that note,
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think Violet is a venom offspring. I think you're right.
And that could also explain why Andarna waited. She's a balance.
Well, right. That could explain everything. That's why she can wield from the ground and from the sky. If she can do that. She's the exception to the balance because she's not venom or human. Fuck.
Imagine Theophany's surprise when she found out it was her.
Oh,
I feel like we should write an essay. So yeah, that's my
I'm gonna need to take some time to process that.
I know. And I also feel like it is one of those where the more you think about it, the more things could fit, but also we have so little to go off of. So I really have no idea. It's just one of those things where a lot of other things could be explained. If that were the case, she's the exception to the rule.
Right. It's clear that something makes her special, but the question is what is making her special, and if it's that she's half venom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's honestly not a super uncommon fantasy trope, right? Like, cross blood unites the kingdoms.
Yeah, I mean, Aragorn has elvish blood.
Yeah. So, not to make it seem not unique, because this world is sick and unique, but yeah.
All right. I feel like I could talk so much longer, but we should probably wrap it up.
Yes. On that crackpot theory note, thank you for listening. We will be back doing more of exactly this, sitting and talking through theories and blowing each other's and potentially your minds. If you do have topics that you want us to cover or specific questions related to a topic that you want us to ask, you can reach us at dragonsinthedetailspod@gmail.com. We'll link it in the show notes.
Or if you want to tell us that we're completely wrong, we're open to that. We can handle it.
Please do give us feedback.
Come with receipts. Do not tell us we're wrong and offer absolutely no evidence. Like, I want chapter numbers, I want page numbers, I want quotes.
Agree. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Until next time.